All right, folks, want to thank all of you for making Locked On College Basketball your first listen or your first watch of the day. Shout out to those everyday listeners checking out the show on YouTube. We very much appreciate it. And we are going to continue now our conference preview series discussing every single college basketball conference in the country ahead of the 2023-24 season. We only got about 4 or 5 more of these. And today we are talking Ohio Valley Conference. And the big storyline for the OVC is the addition of Western Illinois. It is a rare conference realignment move that actually works out geographically. Most of the conference realignment, of course, most of it happens at a Power 5, Power 6 level where, there's a little bit more at stake, as it were. But for Western Illinois, this is a move that fits with them geographically. They have been in the Summit League since 2007. This is a school that has been at the Division I level for 43 years and has yet to make the NCAA tournament. So I don't think that it is a move that is going to dramatically shake up the top of the OVC. This team went 16-14 last year. They went 9-9 in the Summit League. They are currently at 304th in KenPom in the preseason rankings, which is 6th in the OVC. So they're potentially going to be a team that finishes towards the middle of the pack. I think the Almanac projected them to be, 5th or 6th in their first season in the OVC. So a team that's going to do fine, that could potentially be somebody who pushes the top of the envelope in the OVC in future years, especially as they kind of get used to the different play styles and various things that change conference to conference, but not exactly a significant needle mover in the short term or probably the long term for the OVC. Western Illinois is also the only school in the conference that had a coaching change last year. We kind of used to see in some of these mid-major, low-major conferences have a lot more coaching changes as coaches get promoted, as the carousel swings on and on. But the Leathernecks of Western Illinois, the only team that had a coaching change, they replaced Rob Jeter with Chad Boudreau. Jeter was hired at Southern Utah University. He went 39-45 at Western Illinois, but he did improve that record every single year. Prior to his time at Western Illinois, he was at Milwaukee for a decade. He led that team to 2 NCAA tournament appearances, along with his assistant coach, Chad Boudreau, who just got hired by Western Illinois. He was the associate head coach starting in 2021, former head coach at Highland Community College, again, an assistant under Jeter at Milwaukee. So a guy who has been around the program, is familiar with the offense they were running. You're probably not going to see a ton of changes philosophically for Western Illinois after this coaching change. Well, as we've done so often with these mid-major, lower major conferences, as we discuss the biggest storylines for each conference, we're going to talk about some transfers out and some transfers in. And most of the time, the story is a lot of players transferring out, a lot of first-teamers, second-teamers transferring to greener pastures, to bigger schools, and not very many guys coming in. But that's actually kind of the opposite of what happened in the OVC. They did lose a pair of first-teamers, and they lost their freshman of the year, but they actually gained quite a few Power 5, Power 6 transfers coming into their program. So highlight the few guys going out. Freshman of the year, Cameron Hafner, is out the door. He was at Eastern Illinois. He's transferred to Evansville. Ohio Valley first-teamer Philip Russell went from Southeast Missouri State to UT Arlington. And then a fellow first-teamer Isaiah Swope went from Southern Indiana to Indiana State. Those are the 3 movers in terms of first-teamers, second-teamers, third-teamers, and award winners in the OVC. However, there's a lot of intriguing transfers, again, transferring from Power 6 programs to the Ohio Valley Conference that I wanted to highlight. We'll talk about a few of them more individually as we get later into the show, but a few to keep an eye on. Makhel Mitchell. We talked about Arkansas in the first segment and his brother Makhel Mitchell. Makhel Mitchell transferred out of Arkansas. Part of the reason their depth is a little bit down. He transferred to Little Rock. You also have Jason Jatobo, who transferred from Florida to Tennessee State. Jameer Chaplin from South Florida to Little Rock. Deontay Miles from Xavier to Morehead State. Callan K.K. Robinson from Texas A&M to Little Rock, Josiah Davis from West Virginia to Tennessee Tech, Kyron Powell from Houston to Southern Indiana, and Denham Dawson from Nebraska to Tennessee State. So for those of you keeping track at home, that is 8 Power 6 transfers who are joining the Ohio Valley Conference this upcoming season. Always fun to see how these guys do. Some of them probably weren't going to cut it at the Power 6 level, and they may not even cut it at this level, and they may be guys who just aren't going to make it. Some of them are probably going to have the best seasons of their career. Some of them not only are going to do that, but they might be Ohio Valley first teamers, Ohio Valley Player of the Year candidates. Like that is something we have seen from players who transfer down. So it'll be fun to see which of these guys pop. And of course, if there's a trend in terms of which programs tend to get the most out of these guys, that's probably going to be something that continues to happen in the future, where those programs continue to land high major players who are looking to come down to that level and pop off. Before we get into our awards and predictions for who's going to win, I want to do our tier rankings as well. I got 4 different tiers for the 11 teams that are in the Ohio Valley Conference. Tier 1 is Morehead State and SIU Edwardsville. Morehead State has been, I think they've gone 44-12 in the last 3 years, so they're clearly at the top. SIU Edwardsville, very solid program as well. 3 teams in Tier 2 with Tennessee State, Little Rock, and UT Martin. Tennessee Martin. Tier 3 is SEMO, which is Southeast Missouri State, as well as Western Illinois, the newcomer to the conference, and Tennessee Tech. Rounded out with Tier 4, which is Southern Indiana, Eastern Illinois, and down at the bottom, Lindenwood. Well, let's talk about Little Rock. Let's talk about some of these teams that might make a push. Morehead State is the team to beat. We'll talk about them too, but could somebody challenge them, win that OVC regular season, or win that OVC automatic bid and make themselves a chance to win a game in the big dance? We're going to talk about all of that after a word from today's sponsor, Prize Picks. Prize Picks offers weekly promotions right now that can lead to big payouts, like their Taco Tuesday deals. Each Tuesday, if you're listening to this on a Tuesday, folks, each Tuesday, Prize Picks discounts select player projections up to 25% to provide you even more value. With the Prize Picks reboot policy, your entries stay in play even if one of your players gets injured. This is unprecedented for NFL games and college football top 25 matchups. If you have a player who exits the game in the first half and does not return in the second half, that player is rebooted. Again, you do not find this on other daily fantasy sports platforms. Prize Picks is the only place that does injury insurance. And folks, this app is so easy to use. All you do is pick 2 or more players and you choose more or less with the given stat. So Patrick Mahomes, 155 passing yards. He gets more than that, you win. He gets less than that, you lose. Patrick Mahomes has not thrown for under 155 passing yards since October of 2019. So you can find deals like that all over the Prize Picks app. And right now, if you go to prizepicks.com/lockedoncollege and use that promo code LockedOnCollege, you can get a first deposit match of up to $100. Again, that's prizepicks.com/lockedoncollege using promo code LockedOnCollege for a first deposit match of up to $100. Prize Picks, daily fantasy sports made easy. All right, folks, continuing our conference preview here, talk about the Ohio Valley Conference. We talked about the newcomer in the league, Western Illinois, new coach joining them as well as some players who are out the door, transferring to other pastures, as well as all the newcomers joining the conference, some new faces coming from some pretty prestigious programs like Florida and Arkansas, West Virginia, Xavier, Houston, some really good programs, lending some players down to the OVC. We're excited to see how that all shakes out. But want to talk here about the favorites to win the conference, and you have to start with Morehead State, because Morehead State is 44-12 in the OVC conference the last 3 years. They went 14-4 last year, 22-12 overall. They did not earn that automatic bid thanks to a strong run from SIU Edwardsville. So certainly some extra motivation to get themselves back into the big dance, but they do expect to be the favorite to win the regular season. And they lost some talent. Alex Gross out the door, 12 points, 7.5 boards. Jake Wolf, 9 points for him. But they did keep 3 key guards. Most of their backcourt is still intact. Mark Freeman is back, 15 points, 3.7 assists for him last year. Drew Thielwell, 11.3 points, shot about 38% from deep. And then Khalil Thomas, kind of a do-it-all guy, about 8 points, about 5 boards, also shot about 37.5% from 3. So they keep 3 key guards. They also add a big man from Xavier in Deontay Miles. He only played 6.5 minutes per game last year, only averaged 1.1 points and 1.3 rebounds, but he's 7 feet tall. You just don't get a lot of 7-foot tall guys in the Ohio Valley Conference. On a side note, I bet Sean Miller kind of wishes he still had Deontay Miles back in light of the Zach Fremantle injury. Logan Duncombe, their backup center, has stepped away from basketball for personal reasons, so they're a little thin up front, and losing Deontay Miles probably didn't feel like as big of a loss then as it might feel like right now. But their loss is Morehead State's gain, as Miles could be a breakout candidate for that team this year. They also add a superstar from the NAIA level. That's Riley Minix. Minix averaged 25.5 points per game last year at the NAIA level. That also came with 13.5 rebounds. He was a career 41% three-point shooter in the at the NAIA level on 554 career three-point attempts. This dude lit it up. He is a shooter, a gunner, 41% on over 550 attempts. Obviously, there's a big learning curve going from NAIA to Division I, but this is a guy who can absolutely light it up and should contribute at the very least offensively. He's also 6'7". Like, this is a stretch 4 right here for Morehead State, a fun addition for them. Again, 3 guards coming back, 7-footer from Xavier, and then a 6'7" stretch 4. Preston Spradlin's been there for 9 years, or entering his 9th year. I think this team's going to continue to roll at Morehead State. But there are some dark horse candidates, some teams that could challenge them. One of them being SIU Edwardsville. They went 19-14 last year. They went 9-9 in the OVC. That was tied for 6th. But they returned 3 double-digit scorers in the backcourt. DeMarco Minor, 14.3 points per game. Rayshawn Taylor, 15.5 points per game. He's dealing with a significant ACL injury, though, so depending on how quickly he gets back is a huge part of the storyline for Edwardsville. They also get Shamar Wright back, 10.6 points per game. This is a team that has embraced the no-middle defense, the Grant McCaslin, Mark Adams, Chris Beard, that style defense, and it's helped them gradually increase their defensive metrics at KenPom every single year. I think we're going to continue to see this team, especially with 3 returning guards, continue to be a better defensive team year in and year out. And I think that's going to help them be a team that could really challenge for going from 6th potentially up into the top 2, top 3, maybe enough to make a run in the make a run towards the big dance. And then Little Rock. I've teased Little Rock a handful of times already. They went 10-21 last year. They were just 6-12 in the Ohio Valley Conference, tied for 8th. But this is a team that made some fun additions. They also lost 5 players who averaged 7 points per game. So we're talking dark horses here. Like, for those of you who've been listening to these regularly, this is a pretty legitimate dark horse pick here. Sometimes I pick teams who finished 4th, who added a bunch of key players, and you're like, well, that's maybe not that shocking. But this team finished 8th, and they lost 5 players who averaged 7 or more points per game last year, including Myron Gardner, who was their leading scorer at over 13 points per game. But they made some fun additions in the transfer portal. Makhel Mitchell, 3.6 points, 3.2 rebounds, and 13 minutes per game at Arkansas last year. You get a 6'10" guy who played double-digit minutes per game for a very good Arkansas team. That is a win right there. Jameer Chaplin, 7.5 points, 3.1 boards at South Florida last year. 6'5" wing for them. KK Robinson did not play much at A&M last year. 5.6 minutes per game, averaged just under 2 points. But again, 2 guys from the SEC, 1 guy from South Florida. This is a quality trio of transfers to bring in via the portal for Little Rock. They also keep D'Antoni Gordon, who is a 6'8" power forward, averaged 13.7 points per game. So I said Myron Gardner was their leading scorer last year. I apologize. That was incorrect. Gardner was 13.2 points per game. So Gordon comes back, 13.7 points, 5.7 rebounds. They also keep Jordan Jefferson, who averaged 8 points per game last year, shot 39% from 3. So they got their rugged power forward back. They got a sharpshooter who's going to step into a starting lineup. They got a big man from Arkansas. They got a point guard from A&M. They got a wing from South Florida. There's enough intrigue and excitement there to potentially believe that Little Rock could go from 8th to 1st, or at least in that top 2 or 3, with enough firepower to potentially make a run in the OVC conference tournament and put themselves in the big dance. Closing out the show with some award projections here in the OVC, starting with Player of the Year. And we're going with the point guard on probably the best team in the conference at Morehead State, and that's Mark Freeman. Mark Freeman averaged 15 points per game last year, 3.7 assists, was a 36% three-point shooter. Expectation is that he's going to be the straw that stirs the drink for the team that, again, 44-12 in the last 3 years. There's a real good chance that they're the OVC regular season champion. If that's the case, would not be surprised to see Mark Freeman carrying some hardware at the end of the year. My honorable mention is Rayshon Taylor from SIU Edwardsville. I mentioned him as a guy who's recovering from an ACL injury. If he's back to start the year, if he averages 16, 17 points per game like he's perfectly capable of doing, that team makes a run, wouldn't be surprised to see him being the guy with that award either. Newcomer/freshman of the year, I'm going with the big fella from Arkansas, Makhel Mitchell, transferring from Arkansas to Little Rock again. Guy who averaged under 4 points, under 4 rebounds at Arkansas last year, but played 13 minutes per night for the Hogs. I think he's going to be the low post anchor for this Little Rock team. I think he's going to get the ball in his hands a lot. I think we're going to see him post, maybe not averaging a double-double, but maybe close to averaging a double-double, posting plenty of them. And while I think there are a significant amount of good transfers who have joined this conference for this upcoming season, I think Mitchell's the guy with his size, with his experience in the SEC, who's probably going to be the person taking home this award. But I'm going to give an honorable mention to Riley Minix, the NAIA transfer, is joining Morehead State, because anybody who can shoot the crap out of the ball the way that he did at that level is probably going to make an impact, even at the Division I level. Coach of the year, I'm going with Brian Barone at SIU Edwardsville. I think this is a team that could jump from 6th all the way up to 2nd or 1st. That no middle defense is no joke, for real. We've seen a lot of coaches have a lot of success once they get that implemented. Barone said he's been working on it for a couple of years. I think this might be the year where the team is really fully ready, especially with a lot of returners. They're going to be embracing it. I think it's going to show up in the stats. I think it's going to show up in the advanced stats. And I think if this team makes a push into the top 3 and they know that coaching had a big role in it because of that no middle defense, I think that might be enough for Barone to take home Coach of the Year. And then we're going to close it out with Defensive Player of the Year, Josiah West at Western Illinois. New team in the conference, but Josiah West is a fantastic defensive player, averaged 1.7 blocks and 1 steal per game last year for the Leathernecks. 6'5" wing. He's a menace on the perimeter. He's a menace around the rim. Really good rebounder. Certainly coming into a new conference, defending new players on different floors, all that stuff could make it a little bit of a challenge for him, but he's too good of a defensive player to ignore when looking at potential candidates to win this award. Well, that's going to wrap us up for today here on the Locked On College Basketball Podcast. Thank you so much for making the show your first listen or your first watch of the day. We'll be back with more conference previews, some recruiting updates, a transfer portal update, believe it or not, all that stuff coming your way as we get closer and closer to the start of the month of November and the college basketball season. Thank you again for listening. And until next time, as always, peace out.